many reasons, too many to count, to say that I love you, to worship you now. And your love is perfect, and your heart is kind. I'm yours forever, forever you're mine. Jesus, the anthem of my heart, Jesus, the anchor of my soul. I'm overwhelmed by all you are. Oh, how I love you. You call me beloved, and you call me friend. Grace says I'm worthy. You welcome me in. Now all that I long for, and all that I need, is to be in your presence. Forever I fall at your feet. Jesus, the anthem of my heart, Jesus, the anchor of my soul. I'm overwhelmed by all you are. Oh, how I love you. Jesus, the anthem of my heart, Jesus, the anchor of my soul. I'm overwhelmed by all you are. Oh, how I love you. Faithful to the end, God, you are always true. Where do I begin? There's so many reasons to love you. Your promise never breaks, your beauty never fades. What else can I say? There's so many reasons to love you. Faithful to the end, God, you are always good. Where do I begin? There's so many reasons to love you. The promise never breaks, the beauty never fades. What else can I say? There's so many reasons to love you. Oh, there's so many reasons to love you. Oh, adored that ancient cross. How precious is my Savior's blood. The beauty of heaven wrapped in my shame. The image of love upon death's throne. If half in my heart was worth the pain, what joy could you see beyond the grave? If love found my soul worth dying for, how wonderful,
How glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious, my chains are gone, my debt is paid, from death to life, and grace to grace.
if heaven now owns that vacant tomb, how great is the hope that lives here. The passion that tore through hell like a rose, the promise that rolled back death and its stone. Freedom is worth the life you raised. Oh, where is my sin? Where is my shame? If love paid it all to have my own,
How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious, my chains are gone, my debt is paid, from death to life, and grace to grace.
I see the cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. From death to life, I will sing your praise. In the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. From death to life, I will sing your praise.
In the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise. In the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise. In the wonder of your grace, how my soul will sing your praise. In the wonder of your grace, how my soul will sing your praise. How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious, my chains are gone, my debt is paid, from death to life, and grace to grace. When I see that cross, when I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise. In the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your soul will sing your praise, and the wonder of your grace. Oh, my soul will sing your praise. How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious. My chains are gone, my debt is paid. From death to life, and grace to grace. You will never leave. Your love sustains me before I even would love. You brought me here to rest. You've given me space to breathe. So I'll stay still until it says it. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He's good. It's a love like no other. And you will never leave. Your love sustaining me before I even knew what love was. You brought me here to rest and given me space to breathe. So I'll stay still until it sinks in. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other. Now I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. I'm breathing deep all of your goodness, your loving kindness to me. Now I can see your love is Now I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. Indeed, your love, your goodness, your love and kindness to me. I can see your love is better than all the others that I've seen. I'm breathing your love, your goodness, your love and kindness to me. And I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Breathe deep and know that He is good. He's a love like no other.
Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for just everybody getting here this morning, God. I just want to thank you for your gospel, for your life, for your Son, just dying on the cross for our sins and giving us the opportunity to have that relationship with you, that deep relationship we experience just so much joy from. And God, I just want you to remind everybody in here this morning and through our message that the gospel is simple, that we don't have it to do anything to receive your grace. Just have faith. And we pray. Amen. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down, want to know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down, I want to know you, Lord. Want to know you, Lord. I used to think I could box you in, but I'm laying down, want to know you, Lord. I used to think I could box you in, but I'm laying down, I want to know you, Lord. Want to know you, Lord.
Lord, I've been told to be ashamed. Lord, I've been told I don't measure up. Lord, I've been told I'm not good enough. But you're here with me. I'll reach out and you find me separate us. I'll reach out and you find me in the darkness. And you say no amount of untruths can separate us. I'll reach out and you find me in the dark. And you say no amount of untruths can separate us.
I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. Shout at you. Find me in the dark. And say no amount of untruths can separate us. I reach out. I reach out and you find me in the dark. And you say no amount of untruth can separate us. I will rejoice.
I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord.
All right, that was awesome. Why don't you guys go ahead and have a seat? My name is Matt Olszewski. I'm one of the pastors here at H2O Toledo. So glad you guys could join us this morning after all that snow. Did everybody enjoy their few days off from school? Nice, nice. I like it. I'm sure some of you got out in the snow, tried to enjoy it. Not quite warm enough to build a snowman or anything like that, but I'm sure you had fun in it. Hey, I want to just run through some quick announcements before we move on with the rest of the service. If you are new to H2O, or if you've come a few times but you've never filled out our Connect card, we'd love for you to fill that out. It's underneath your seat. This is the best way for us to kind of just connect you into everything that we do here at H2O. So that will get you an invite from one of our life group leaders, which is something that we do every single week, which is our next announcement. We have life groups Monday through Thursday. That's right. Monday through Thursday, or actually Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We meet right here in the Student Union. This is just a group of people getting together to get to know one another, to get to know what it means to be a Christian and follow Jesus, and then just study the Bible. Look at what it says, talk about it, have discussions. And so, again, if you've never been to a life group, we'd love for you to come out. That's where you really get to meet and begin gaining friends here at H2O. That's a place where we really love to point people to go, is our life group. So check out one of our life groups. If you never know what's going on around H2O, you can check our socials. We're pretty much on everything: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. You'll find all sorts of announcements in there. And then also, we have something that we started last year when we were doing all online services. we started a podcast. And yeah, it's awesome. And we come out with a podcast every week on Wednesdays, and we talk about different topics. But this semester, we're actually using the podcast platform to go along with the Sunday series that we're currently going through called What's Your Story? And so anything we talk about on a Sunday, we're kind of rehashing through that again, but then also some extra things that maybe we didn't have time to talk about on a Sunday. So you can find that pretty much where you find podcasts. We'd love for you to go back and listen and check that out. There's a lot of great content on there, so check out our podcast. And then finally, in 2 weeks, we have our annual Women's Weekend and Man Maker retreats that we're really excited about. So the women are going to be joining our H2O Bowling Green and H2O OU Church, and you guys are going to be heading towards Findlay, Arlington, and you're going to be hanging out with some women from other H2Os, just getting to know one another, learning about more about your relationship with God. And so we're really excited about that. And then the men, we're staying right here in Toledo, and we're going to be hanging out on a whole Saturday, having some fun. And if that didn't entice you, because words rarely ever entice you, we'll show you a video.
Generation after generation have contemplated what it truly means to be a man. We live in an age where the answer seems to get muddier each and every day. Come discuss what it means to be a man while dining on the finest meats that $20 can buy.
All right. I don't know what that accent was. It was country and Australian all in one. Not even New Zealand. It wasn't a mixture. So, men, we'd love for you to join us for that whole day in a couple weeks. So, as you can already tell, if you've been here at H2O, we're doing things a little bit different. We did all of our music up front, and instead of me or Tom, our other pastor, speaking, we're actually doing something a little bit different this morning. We're having a panel. We're having a panel discussion based on the series that we've been going through called What's Your Story? And so we're going to hear from a group of people in our church that have really been through some things that they're going to share with you and share how God fits into all of that. And so I want all of you to say hi while they get all situated, and they will be coming up. So why don't you guys go ahead and stand up and say hi to someone around you.
Above every doubt, you have my attention here right now. Love from the outset, yours from the start. You broke through the darkness to have my heart. I'm lost to the world, in you forever. Found in a love that never fades, in a hope that never sways. You'll never let go. This love is wild, wild. You got me reaching for the sky. Now I'm spinning over why you'll never let go. This love is wild, wild. This love is wild, wild. This love is wild, wild. We're breaking the silence with heavenly sound, louder than thunder, shaking the ground. If fear comes to find me, I will be found. Here in your presence, you're free.
Okay, good morning. I knew turning my mic on was going to be the first thing I forgot. I was sitting here waiting for a cue. I was like, oh, I think I have to just talk. And my mic wasn't on. Okay, hi, good morning. My name is Rachel, and I sit on the board at H2O Toledo, and I'm on the core and leadership team, and I actually get paid to be a third grade special ed teacher. So this last week was really ideal for me. And normally, I have to hide when I don't have to go to school because of snow, because all of you still have to trek to classes in the snow. But this week, it really worked out for all of us. So let's just give snow a hand. This was great. It was great. So with that being said, like Matt said, we kind of wanted to switch it up a little bit, do a different kind of format for our message this morning, and just talk about some of the things we've introduced in the first couple of weeks. So as a little review, we've been kind of looking at our past, present, and future as narrative. So what do our stories tell us about each other? What do they tell us about God? And how do they affect us, past, present, and future? And we've been acknowledging that we use stories all the time. They teach us things about the world. We use them to entertain ourselves. They inspire us, things like that. So Tom kicked us off talking about how God is still writing our story. He showed us how this is true in the life of Moses, and how there were elements of his life that he didn't write, that he had to kind of grapple with. And then there were some elements that he did write that he had to grapple with. And just how God used him and continues to use his story to show us things about God's faithfulness. And then last week, Matt zeroed in on the story of Job and how much suffering he endured. He urged us to take time to mourn and to begin to unpack and face some of that past pain. So we're hoping that this week kind of serves as a bridge from past to present, that we would start being able to see how these things are true of us. We live in the context of our stories, but how can we be people who want to be for God, want to use our stories for God here in the present? So we're hoping to kind of shift into that mode today. And we're going to do that by hoping to make the theoretical practical. And to do that, I have some lovely people on stage with me, and I will have them introduce themselves. Could you please tell me your name, your role, and because I also host the podcast, and I like to say that the podcast is 2 parts spiritual, 1 part nonsense. So I'd like you to give me your name, your role, and if you had to pick a celebrity narrator for your life story, who would you pick?
All right, hi everyone. I'm Lauren Stewart. I am a media director here and also on the director's board. And a celebrity narrator, I feel like it's so cliche, but the first person that comes to my mind is Morgan Freeman. I mean, his voice is just so wonderful. Who wouldn't want him to narrate your life?
Good answer, good answer. It's like we're on Family Feud. Good answer.
I'm Sarah Birchfield, and I'm on staff with H2O. I'm gonna have to go with J-Lo because I love her. I would hope that she would make my story very inspirational sounding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that JLo's in the market to like narrate a documentary.
I mean,
but maybe
she's making crazy movies.
she's making
so
some choices.
She's ready.
That's true.
Hello, my name's Ian Gustafson. I'm on staff. I do whatever Matto tells me to do. And if I had to have someone narrate my life, wow, this is already like the podcast.
You're
I'm
doing
so-
great.
It's fine. All right. I want someone who would make my life sound more fun and whimsical than it actually is. So I would probably pick like Tom Holland.
Oh. Like with an American accent or
No,
a British
like
one?
I want the full British accent. Like, I just think this is weird to say. He sounds adorable, and it just brings me joy.
Mixed messages.
Precious.
All right, I like it. Well, thank you. Good job. I did not prep them with that question beforehand, so a hand for thinking on the fly. Great job, everyone. So as we get started, here are some clarifiers that we will keep in mind as we go. That our goal is not to like bring these people on stage and make them like trauma totems to be like, look at all the bad things that have happened to them. Let's talk about it. That should be really fun to listen to for 30 minutes. Instead, our goal is to kind of use their lives to show that the story of God's people is diverse and that people come to know God in many different ways and that they have used pieces of their story to get where they are today. And then we always talk about how stories are also not black and white or good or bad, but they evolve as we learn, change, and grow, and that's okay. And sometimes that makes things challenging to talk about or complex, but we're learning to sit in the uncomfortability of that together. And then our last clarifier is we are not experts, but we're excited to point you in the direction of some experts if you're interested. So if something piques your interest and you think, oh, I'd like to know more about that, or I wonder if I could get some help in this area, we'd be more than thrilled to point you in the direction of some people who are true experts in those areas. So with that being said, let's get started. So what are some of the highlights and lowlights of your story? So just a little bit of context in terms of what your story would be. And Lauren, we'll start with you.
All right. So my story, my childhood, I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up, in a middle-class family. My parents went through a pretty messy divorce when I was in middle school, and that led to me and my 3 younger brothers living with my mom. My mom was an alcoholic, suffered from some mental health issues, a lot of depression, and so that led to me kind of being the parent in my family of my 3 younger brothers. So I got to be a parent at a pretty young age. And living in a middle-class family, it's kind of like you live 2 lives. Nobody really looks at you and thinks you're neglected because you live in a nice enough house. You seem to be doing okay, but there was a lot going on behind closed doors. And then when I went away to college, I got to step away from that. And as I got some distance from my family, that's when I was able to start to see how there's a lot of manipulation there and a lot of things that maybe weren't so normal for me growing up. And now over the last 10 years, I've kind of gotten to process that through different stages of my life and see how that shaped me as an adult in both positive and negative ways.
So I guess for me, kind of my parents are, I'd say, like emotionally immature. My mom had my brother when she was 17. She had me when she was 19, and with different dads. And my dad, she left because he was an alcoholic when she was pregnant with me, so I didn't grow up with him. And then my first stepdad was an ex-alcoholic and moved us from Arizona to Pennsylvania, where he had an affair, and my mom tried to take her life. And then she left him and moved to Ohio. And in Ohio is where I really got to learn about Jesus. I met my neighbors, Annie and her mom, Dee, and they showed me so much love. They showed me that God cared about me, that he was a good dad, and I really wanted that. So I was really lucky that I got to learn about God so young and just love him and be loved by him, so that, when things came later where I actually got to meet my biological dad and form a relationship with him, and just all of the other stuff that happens in life, I got to have that with me.
Yeah, I would say for me, I grew up in a Christian home. My mom and my dad were both believers, but my mom had multiple sclerosis or MS. So before church online was cool, I was watching it on TV with my family every Sunday, and I grew up understanding Jesus from a really old white guy saying really big words on our TV, and I didn't understand any of it. And when my mom passed away, I completely rejected God. At first, I was angry, I was upset, and I didn't know how to process it. It wasn't until my now stepmom Teresa came to see that I started to look at God in a way that was loving and caring, and that still took years. I like to say I'm a product of a lot of men and women just having intentional moments with me, and that has shaped my story, dealing with depression and suicide, dealing with different addictions, some entertainment wise like YouTube and video games, other ones more seriously, having a 15-year addiction to pornography from elementary all the way to almost the end of college, and just God being with me throughout all these different stages of those processes is kind of the summary of how I put that.
May I ask you how old you were when your mom died?
My mom passed away 2 months before I was 10.
So with that kind of context, you all kind of had parts of your story that you didn't necessarily choose or you didn't write for yourselves, that were kind of inherited. And when would you say that you started through processing through those different parts of your story? Sarah, I'll start with you.
So after we moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio, my mom was really depressed. I didn't realize that she had tried to take her life until much later. And that's how a lot of my processing was, I was afraid to ask anything because it was like walking on eggshells at home. And I didn't know anything about my dad. I thought the wrong guy was my dad because he was in my baby book. I like didn't know anything about really where it came from. And so over time, like I kind of like found bits and pieces. And then my freshman year of college, I took an oral history class and I decided to interview my mom. And so for 2 hours when she was trapped in a car ride, I like found out a lot about myself and a lot about her. And I was like, oh, because growing up, all I knew was I was Mexican and my mom was very white. And I am very white, so what does that mean? So just trying to figure out like what does this look like for me and us, and I feel like since then there's like just kind of processing through with friends and through like just life, living life with people, and there's different things that I find out all the time.
I think for me, when I mentioned this earlier, when I left home and went to college, that kind of gave me some space for my family to start to look at it and start to process some of it. And to be honest, that was a pretty intro level of processing. I was really just angry. I started to see the things that were not right, and it just made me so mad. And I was able to start looking at that, at least from a view of, okay, this was my life, this was my story, these are things I didn't write, but they happened to me. And there are things to be mad about, but there are also parts of me that are shaped by that in a good way. It has definitely made me who I was. And that was kind of the first way I started processing it. And then that processing has looked different throughout different parts of my life, different stages of my life. I think going through college, I just made peace with it. I was able to make peace with the fact that I have a story that's a little bit messy and that has had some impacts on me. And then the older I got, the more I realized, okay, there was some stuff here I wasn't seeing, maybe some manipulation I wasn't seeing. There are maybe some negative things in my life that this has impacted me. I think when I was younger, I spun it towards the positive. It made me a hard worker. It made me independent. And then as I got older, as I got married, I started to see, it's made me really angry. My first emotional response to everything is anger. That definitely comes from some things that happened to me. Then as I started going through training to be a foster parent and learning more about trauma, I realized, there's a lot of trauma responses I have in my life. There's a lot of things that are just built into my body physiologically that are automatic responses that I have to different triggers in my life. And so it seems like every stage in my life, I'm learning a little bit more, I'm going a little bit deeper, but it never really goes away. Things that you think you've dealt with, things that you think you've learned, they might go away for a little while, but then something changes in your life, like getting married or having kids, and somehow it all comes right back. So I found that processing it isn't just a one and done. It's really a lifelong process of working through these feelings, identifying your emotions, coming up with a plan to address them, and learning how to live in your body that's through trauma.
Yeah, that's huge. But I think that is like, that's why it's so important to kind of hold this idea lightly of like having, like we would love for it to be simple enough to like have it wrapped up in like, I processed through it, I came through the other side, and now I'll never feel a bad thing again. Super done. But it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Sorry, if you're listening and you're hoping that it works like that. It doesn't work like that. But I think it's like being open to the idea that with new information, with new language even, like I think about some of the things that we talk about, like when we discuss some of these things, where we're using like super like psychological based language that they've only learned in the last like 5 to 10 years that we didn't know about growing up. We didn't know that like these things impacted our brains or impacted our bodies or like those kinds of things. So just like being open to that new information and allowing that to like change how we view things. Super important, but super hard work. Could you talk a little bit about, Sarah, what areas of your life feel particularly shaped by your story? Sarah's super prepared. This is one of the things I love about Sarah. When you ask Sarah to do a job, she will come prepared.
That's actually part of my problems. Because I want to talk, I read this book called The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And one of the things that they talked about was how for most people who grew up there, even though we internalize or we externalize those things differently, there's a part that's like your role self that you learn how to play in your family. Sometimes that's like the rebellious, whatever, I don't care, I'm mad, whatever. That might have been more my brother. But for me, the role that I kind of took was, I am a good and helpful girl who you will never have any reason to dislike or treat badly. So I was always helpful, always doing my very best at all of the different things. And I was always positive. My mom used to call me Pollyanna, and that's an old reference, but basically like a cheerful, optimistic little like Orphan Annie kind of thing. Like the sun will come out. And there's still parts of that that are like part of my personality that are just like, I want to be helpful. I want to be good. Being obedient is super easy for me. But it's also like, as I've been processing through and like coming in my relationship with the Lord, it's like, I want to be helpful because I love God and because He has given me that freedom to do it without like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, people will hate me. Even though those are the sneaky thoughts that are like fight with. It's just like, if I don't help, people are going to think I'm unlovable and they're not going to like me, and then I will be bad. But I think like there's also like fantasies that we have as kids that kind of help us process through it, or think like, oh, maybe if this just happens, if only this. And mine was, if only people would see how helpful and good I am, then they will love me and think I'm worth their time and affection. And with my relationship with God, it was like He already thought I was worth His time and affection, and that made all the difference in changing kind of like the motivations for why I wanted to be helpful and good and loving to other people.
Ian, do you have areas of or parts of your story that you feel like impact your life?
All of them. I would say, like throughout the day to day, like things I have to constantly like remind myself to be reminded of. I really agree with what Lauren said, like there's no committing to everything, always processing, thinking through everything. I have to remind myself to see that there is joy all the time. Like depression and suicide are things that like I struggle with intensely for a period, but I don't necessarily control when I feel depression coming on or anxiety or anything like that. And sometimes I just walk through what I'll call like seasons of gray, where like I just feel like kind of a husk and like I'm going through the motions, but just like having that trust there, that God is working and He's moving. Like there are splashes of color that'll come back every once in a while. Sometimes that's the people. Sometimes that's the just taking a moment to just remind myself of the simple gospel, kind of like we sang about just before this. But I would say like the biggest ones for me are just relying on God to find like my joy, my confidence, and my identity. Because I also need help too. It's really easy to get your identity from your work and the things that you do for other people when you get encouraged and praised by it all the time. And when you live this season of life, you're good with anything. And positive reinforcement is very powerful. It's just a reminder every day not to make that an idol.
That's really good. Yeah, we talk about kind of like with the management of these things that kind of crop up as you like you look around the world and you think, oh, I feel like I'm having a different response to these things than other people are. Like I feel like some things are happening, other people seem fine with them, and I feel a very big feeling about it. And just kind of what the work of that looks like. Can any of you just talk about kind of like how you kind of grapple with the fact that it is hard work, that it is management?
I think a lot of that is rooted in, as we've all talked about, identifying those feelings that we have, those thoughts that we have. Sarah, I like how you said we kind of have this line that we tell ourselves. I know mine is, if I don't do it, nobody else will. I'm the one who's responsible. And I think that's so important to identify that thing that we tell ourselves that's not true, but in our mind, it feels very, very true. It feels like it's the only thing. So I have to remind myself, like, somebody else can do this. You are not the only one who is responsible. Everything doesn't fall on you. There are other people who can help. So for me, I have to recognize those things that I know are not true, but in my head, they feel very true, and tell myself what the actual truth is.
So we've talked about on the podcast in some past weeks a little bit about how we can't throw, this is maybe like a really old thing, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning that like when we categorize things as good or bad, it can be tempting to be like, my past was really difficult, all of this was bad, I just won't interact with it, I won't think about it, I'll put it in a tiny little box that I'll never open again. But we kind of talk about how that then doesn't allow for some good things to be included in even the past story that has its challenges. So could you kind of talk a little bit about maybe those like little good pieces that you found in your own story and going through things, and like kind of little areas that you've been able to experience maybe some redemption?
Yeah, I think that was definitely my feeling when I first started processing through my stories. My whole childhood was terrible. We're just going to block that all out and not worry about it. It was a different time in my life. And it's amazing too when you start thinking about it, how nuanced it really is. And when you start diving into it, you realize, yeah, there's trauma there, but a lot of the things that my parents did, it comes from their own trauma. It's generational, right? So things that they experienced from their own parents, they're just replaying out with their own kids because they didn't have the ability to break that cycle. Some people are privileged to break trauma cycles and some people are not. And so I'm thankful to be a person who has the knowledge base education to be able to break some of those cycles. But when I look back with a more nuanced view of my childhood and kind of see past those generational trauma cycles, I can see really good times with my parents, really nice times when we were kids. I remember I did art a lot with my mom. My mom was really artistic. And she always encouraged me to do crafts and to paint and color and all this stuff. I love that stuff when I was a kid. And as I got older, I kind of got away from that. You know, I'm a science teacher, so I'd say it's pretty far away from that. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to kind of re-explore that creative side and craft a lot. I do a lot of fun stuff in my classroom. I get to do a lot of visual stuff here at the church. And that's a part of my life I kind of shut off for a while because, like I said, it was in my past box. It was in my childhood box. That wasn't me anymore. And so as I've gotten older, I've gotten to take that out of the box and play around with it and remember, you know, that was a really nice part of my childhood. There was some other crazy going around there that is tied up with it, but it wasn't all bad.
Grace, if you can pull up the Corinthians verse. 2 Corinthians 1 says, starting verse 3, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." And when I think about some of the redemption, I think like God has done a huge work in redeeming my relationship with I have a million parental figures. But my mom, my stepdad presently, my second stepdad, and my dad. But specifically, my biological dad, we met when I was we started talking when I was a sophomore, met him as a junior in high school. And then I went out and I visited him and got to meet my brothers and sisters and some aunts and uncles my freshman year of college. My junior year of college, my dad went to jail. He molested a little girl, and it was a really terrible, horrible thing, and it really ripped apart my brothers and sister on his side. And so, like, it could have been one of those things where, like, we're not that close. I can definitely just walk away from this right now. But I felt like God was really, like, just encouraging me to be an encouragement to him. That, like, so point to the gospel that God changes murderers and people who've done crazy things and people who've done not so crazy things, and he loves them and he cares about them. And so I started sending him letters in jail, and we started writing back and forth, and like we really started to have a relationship. I would send him like verses from the Bible, and then when he got out, we would start to call on the phone. And a couple years ago, I was talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, you sent me Psalm 27." And then he started to recite it to me in Spanish. And I just like, well, try not to cry on the phone, you know, just like, wow, that's so beautiful, Dad. I'm so proud of you. And I just am so thankful that we were able to keep that relationship, that it wasn't just like, all right, I'm going to burn that bridge, walk away. It doesn't mean anything to me. It was like, all right, God, like, what can you do to speak into this relationship? And how can you, like, start to heal some things?
Kind of within that, we've talked about how, so there are different characters in our story that maybe come in and out as our stories develop. Could you just talk about the role of other people in some healing or some growth in your story? Ian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say I have a lot of characters in that area. says, once a friend can be trusted, but an enemy won't wise misses. And probably the first person to do that in my life was like my mentor in high school. He's a biology teacher. He also led like my high school Bible study that I just started going to because some friends started it. His name's Mike Carney. And Carney was like the first person I told that I ever tried to take my own life. And instead of like, backing away from something like that, he gave me a hug and just sat and listened to me as I processed through my story and helped me through my past. He actually encouraged me to talk to my dad and do that. I had a beautiful moment with my father where I got to talk about that, and I also got to just, for the first time, like realize like, oh, my dad did the best he could. Like my dad lost his wife and still had 2 sons to raise. He was hurting as much as I was, and that was a really cool moment. And like my dad's helped through that. I helped him through stuff like that. Even my older brother, I love my brother Dylan. We're both really stubborn. Feels like a trait in us of some men, but like even like small conversations with him, and then going into college, tons of different guys, tons of people I've had side by side. But I also want to talk about Brian Wiles for a little bit. Brian Wiles was one of the pastors at Bowling Green, and he was one of the mentors that I sought when I was in college. And I used to be on staff at BG before I came here, and one of the most loving things that he ever did for me was before you come on staff, I'm making you go to counseling. I had never gone to counseling before in my life. I viewed it as like a scary thing. I viewed it as like a way of defeat. He just looked me in my face and said, like, I will deny you, staff. I know this is what you want to do. I know this is your calling, but you need to process your past a little bit more with some people who can help you a bit more. And it was for 6 months. And that is where I gained so many tools to process through stuff. And I got to be open and share more about my life. And it takes a lot of guts to say, like, you need to really go through this thing. And Brian's one of the people who do that. And here at Toledo, I knew I wanted to work with Nato when he first looked at me. It's like, you look like a deer in headlights when you want to raise support. So either you don't believe that you should be fully funded or you're not trusting God, or both. So which is it? I like Nato. It was both. Spoiler alert. But yeah, just like having different people at different points, 12 partners, different guys in my life, like just making it a point to be vulnerable with people and just allow them to speak into like my past, even in my current hurt, to help me move forward and deal with it today.
I'd say when I was younger, my friend Annie's mom, Dee, she kind of made herself our adoptive aunt. And she really cared about me. And she would ask me about my life, and she would kind of help me process some things. And then I also had this, somebody else's mom. There were these boys that we were friends with. There were 3 boys and 1 mom. And she was just like so happy to have girls to dote on and to talk to. And she talked to us about Anne of Green Gables, and she taught me how to sew and, just do very girly things together with her.
Back to the 1800s.
Traveled, yeah, we time traveled. It was super great. But having like these moms that really paid attention to me and like loved me well. I know my mom really like resented them for a long time and had a hard time with them, but I like needed that for sure. And then just like through the years, like having like some really great H2O men show what it looks like to like be a man after God. That's like really helpful. I know I would go over to Pastor Matt Party's house sometimes, and he would be interacting with his kids. It's like even like dumb things. He was like talking with them about like discipline and stuff, and I would just tear up because it's just like, here's this man who loves Jesus. He's a dad. It's so good. And it was really great. Yeah, just being able to see other people, like, what does it look like to like follow Jesus, and like to love people well.
Yeah, I agree with that idea of seeing family in the church. I mean, for people like us who didn't have a normal family growing up, not even knowing what it looks like to have a family where they are following Jesus and there's love and respect. That was huge for me to see what it looks like to even be a family, what it means to even be a family.
It's great to have friends that you can really relate to in the fact that you feel like you got to adulthood like a little bit beat up. Like, I don't know, we got here, the means were very questionable, but here we are. And it's great to have those relationships because, like, I know Lauren and I are that for each other a lot of times. We're like, oh no, I found out a bad thing about me today. Like, and I know that she'll always be like, you know what? It's okay. Like, you're doing great. Like, it's gonna be okay. And that's really great. But it's also good to have the balance of a low trauma friend, because that person can sometimes model for you what a quote unquote normal response is when things happen. And your husband Tom is our low trauma friend. And there's times where we'll have to be like, well, how is Tom responding to this? And let's figure out how we can model a normal response based off of how Tom's feeling about it. And the balance of that is really helpful. So I would encourage you, go out there, find a high trauma friend, find a low trauma friend. Get that good balance going.
Might be dangerous to start categorizing people. In
No,
such
you just have to
ways.
ask right up front. Tell me
you have a
how
lot of
many
trauma?
aces do you have? Tell me right now.
How about you guys let us know how that goes?
I'm looking for a below 5 friend.
We're not experts.
We're not experts.
very clearly.
Again, 2 part spiritual, 1 part nonsense. We're doing great. Okay, so how easy or difficult is it to kind of see God's fingerprints as a part of your story? Or in what ways have you kind of seen God craft your story? We talk about how God's the author. He's written even hard parts, or he's written these past parts. He's still writing currently. And how have you kind of seen God's fingerprints through that?
I always talk about this, how I ended up going to school, even coming to church. So I didn't grow up in a Christian family. We didn't go to church. Every once in a while, my mom would send me to Sunday school randomly, and they'd be like rehearsing for the Christmas pageant. And so I would just sit on the side and watch, and that was my experience with church. And I went to BG, and we won't talk about that, but I went to BG. And let me tell you, I didn't want to go to BG, obviously, right? Both my parents went there. I was not into it. And I ended up going to BG. They offered me the most money. I was not happy about it, but let me tell you, God knew I was supposed to be at BG. I didn't want to be there, but God knew I was. And I went to BG. I met one of my friends from high school, who's a year older than me. The first day on campus, she invited me to H2O. And I was so curious about coming to a church and what it meant to be a Christian and what it meant to be part of this community, but I was never going to set foot in a church by myself. That was way too intimidating. It wasn't going to happen. But my friend who I knew, she invited me, and I went with her, and I never left. And I think all the time about how God wrote that in my story. I mean, it was not the path I chose. If it was up to me, we would not have went that way. But God knew it was a path He had written for me. I had a verse I was going to share really quick. Let me pull it up here if I can real fast. It's 1 Corinthians 2:9, and it says, "But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love Him." And man, I think that's just so true. I never would have imagined what God had prepared for me if you asked me back when I was in high school. If I could look at my life now, I wouldn't believe it, but I can now see His fingerprints all over it.
Fun fact, Lauren was my overnight orientation buddy.
We go all the way back to orientation.
Yep. That was randomly matched. too.
Randomly matched, yep.
Yep.
Wild times. Lord knows what He's doing.
Sarah Birchfield was my first life here.
I'm old.
Don't give that away, Sarah. We're the same age.
No one will know if we don't tell them. Okay, so as we are kind of approaching our end this morning, as we can start looking back on our stories, maybe some people are listening and thinking like, oh, I don't know that I've ever like really started to unpack some of this. I don't really know where to start. I don't really know what that would even look like. So if somebody is just kind of starting the process of working through some of even the concept of like, I have a story or my story is important, what would you tell that person who is just kind of starting out? Start with Lauren.
Anyone who's talked to me for a minute about this kind of stuff knows I always bring up the word shalom, which means nothing missing and nothing broken. And as I really started processing my story, that's kind of the idea that I hinged everything on, because it can get really depressing starting to process through your story and thinking about it. It can really bum you out, and you can think there's not a lot of hope. The world is very broken. I'm very broken. People are very broken. And that's all true. And what I was hinging my hope on is, one, in reality, the idea that, yeah, the world is broken. I live in a broken world with broken people, and I'm a broken person. But also, there is a world with Jesus where one day those things won't be missing and those things won't be broken. And so I just try to remember there are things in this life that I am missing and I'm never going to have. I'm never going to have a relationship with my mom that other people have. That's the thing in my life that's missing, and I've learned to accept that and not chase after other things to fill that missing void. But I can also at the same time live in the hope that one day I'm going to be with Jesus and those things won't be missing anymore. So it's kind of holding both things in your hands of, yeah, this isn't perfect right now. I'm going to do what I can in my corner of the world to fix what I can. But there are things in my life that are always going to be missing. But one day that's also not going to be true. One day those things will be there and I will be whole.
Oh. Hi, friend. Hi, bud. Welcome to the podcast. You are the youngest guest on the podcast. Sarah.
Ask you to restate the question.
What would you tell somebody who's kind of starting out on this journey?
I don't trust myself to lift a child on these stilts. Yeah, I would say, I think the biggest thing is that you're not alone. Like, you're literally not alone because God is with you and he loves you. He cares. Even when you feel like, well, why did you let that happen? Why you were around when all that stuff went down? And it's like, yes, and he loves you. Both of those things are true. I think, like, for me, like, processing through things, it was really important to, like, start inviting other people into that and, like, asking for help, asking for, I know I would sit down with an older person in H2O Church, Wendy Staninger, and just, like, be like, blah, 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 blah. Am I crazy? And she would be like, you're not crazy. And that made a big difference for me, or just like, oh, okay, great, I'm not crazy. Just having people who are going to encourage you and, yeah, just like letting people love you.
Absolutely. I echo like that. Just surrounding yourself with people who are going to encourage you, people who are going to just love you well. I would add on to that just knowing like what you have missed out in your past, understanding that there are life lessons and stages in life where you just get to enjoy something. Like I lost like a sense of adventure when my mom died, and I did not regain that until probably like sophomore year of college, where like I decided like I'm going to not make a calculated decision and I'm just gonna go out and take a risk. So like I spent a summer in Colorado at LT. It was
Dollar to plug.
yeah, go to LT. It was I had so much healing through that summer. Like I learned like how to have fun again, really. Like to enjoy God's presence in nature. I learned like how not to micromanage my life and accept things for what they are and understanding that there are things outside of my control. Like I am not at fault for everything that's happened in my life. But like God works in all parts of my life. Like that is something that I had to learn. I had to go back and learn how to be free, how to like accept that the world is scary, but the world is also very beautiful. And just like the things I should have learned as a kid, like if I was going through like a normal process, I had to stop and relearn those things. And like a book that was helpful for that for me was a book called Fathered by God. And it had like all these definitions of like the different stages of manhood, and even like, you know, going throughout different things like you know, getting married. I never thought I'd get married. Fun thing in college ministry is you get to watch everyone else get married before you sometimes. And I was that one friend who went to like 38 weddings and I was never the groom. And then Caitlin came into my life. Love my wife.
So this is not a dating podcast.
I know. But Caitlin is someone who helped me learn part of it, where it's
We'll
like,
take that.
yeah, like I had to learn how to have empathy again. Because sometimes when you go through something traumatic too, you're like, this is the worst possible thing that can happen. Like you know it's not in your head, but you feel that in your heart. And like people taught me how to empathize with people again, how to not just have sympathy, but like to feel what they're feeling. And that was a part of my life too that I didn't know I was missing until I started talking with her. So have people that will help you walk through those journeys, relearn some life lessons you might have missed out on just because of what has happened in your past. And know that like even if you feel like you missed out at that stage, it's never too late to experience that.
That's really great. I would just add that too, like as you start to kind of process through these things and unpack some of this, that there's like grace for every stage of kind of grappling with all of this. And again, because we would like it to be this easy, we would like to be like, I proceed to checkpoint A. I do checkpoint A, I proceed to checkpoint B. And eventually I'll get to the point where I did it, I'm done.
I did counseling. I'm done. Great. So good.
Done.
Check. Pro counseling.
Had the thought,
Not
like,
always
oh,
done.
that thing was probably hard. It probably impacted me. Done. But it just doesn't work that way. It's not always linear. It's very loop-de-loop.
Throw out the ladder. It's a drum kit. Matt used that analogy last week.
Yeah, a drum kit, not a ladder. And yeah, so just keep that in mind. Just keep in mind that, like, too, like, I think it's easy to think of God as like this angry foot tapping, like, come on, get over it, move on, keep moving, deal with it. But like, that's just really not his attitude toward us. Like, we're his kids, and he wants good things for us, and he has a lot of grace for those moments too. So I want to thank you all for being on the panel this morning and for sharing your stories and your opinions.
Thanks for having us.
And I'm going to pray for us quickly, and then we will wrap it up. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for just the stories that you've brought forward this morning, God. I just pray that as people listened, they heard hard things, but they also heard stories of hope and people who live with so much hope because of you, God, and because of your people, and just like the healing and the growth that you brought, God. We grieve the things that have been hard, and we surrender them to you to do with what you would do. And we believe that you will do good things. We believe that you're faithful, God. And I just pray that anybody who's listening who feels maybe in the middle of all of this or at the beginning, God, that they would just feel your grace at every stage and at every time where they think like, oh my gosh, I'm always going to feel like this, that they would just feel comforted by you, that they would feel loved by you, that you would provide them people to help and come alongside them and help to navigate what dealing with that looks like. We just praise you and thank you for all that you've done and all that you're going to do with the powerful stories here in this room. And we just pray that as we go into this next week, that we would begin to kind of tackle some of this together. In your name I pray. Amen. Oh.
All right, give it up one more time for the panel. So we know that stepping into this space on a Sunday morning, it can be pretty jarring to kind of like talk through these things. You probably don't expect to show up to church and talk through a lot of these things. And our hope and our prayer that when we started this series is that this would just be a catalyst, like a starting point for some of you to even start having some of these discussions. And so I know that everybody up on this panel, if there's some of you out there this morning that would want to talk through or just try to start that conversation, I know that everybody up here would be willing to at least sit and just listen to you, because we hope and pray that there are some next steps that many of you can take, and so we want to help guide you through that, because you can be a little lost at like, what do I do now? And that's kind of part of a lot of their stories of like, what do I do now? And so yeah, we just want to be there and be a resource to kind of point you in the right direction. Everybody has acknowledged that none of us are experts in any of this. We just have a story to tell. And so we appreciate you guys being here this morning and even staying a little bit longer than normal. But hope you have a great week. And then also you can register for Man Makers and Women's Weekend on our website. If you just go to h2otoledo.org, look for the tabs. So have a great week. Thanks.